Creative Katie, Karen Burchell here, and welcome back to Mixed Media Creations. Today we have an art journal tutorial for you. It's entitled Choose Joy. Get out your leftover gel prints and colored papers. We're going to put them to good use today. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button in the lower right-hand corner. Select the option to be notified of upcoming videos. Here's a sneak peek of the finished page. Ever since I got this Crazy Waves stencil from the Crafter's Workshop, I had this idea of doing collages using the shapes that were in this, and so that's why I'm tracing the shapes. Now, this page very quickly did not go the way I had pictured in my mind, and in the end it turned out wonderful. I'll come back to this. So I'm grabbing my matte gel and my Mod Podge and all my little bits of gel prints. And I picked out teal, blue, and purple ones. And I decided to just kind of alternate purple, teal, blue, purple, teal, blue on there. And I wrote down what color just in case I forgot or got stopped halfway in between. Now when I'm using the gel prints, even though I have little bits, I do not like to keep straight edges, so I rip the paper, and I tend to use a variety of tones, some lights, some darks, gel prints that are on different papers, some that are on tissue, some that are on, because I believe that adds more interest to the overall look. And I'm just using my silicone brush here, which works wonderfully well for this purpose, and Mod Podge. I don't need to use the more expensive gel here for this purpose. The Mod Podge works just great, and I don't care what happens. I just want to get a good solid layer down and make sure that everything is lying fairly flat. Now people say, why would you go through all the extra time and effort of doing this when you could just paint this? And I could, but you're never going to get the variety of textures and colors that you get with the gel prints. You also get the texture from the ripped paper as well. And it's a great way to use up all those little bits. There will be an upcoming video showing you how I store all these little bits. So there is a close-up of the finished collage of all the gel prints. And I'm really liking the colors, but it is not at all, like I said, where I thought I was going with this page. And so I dried it and I let it sit overnight. Now here's a circles template that I bought from Michael's, and I find this really useful. Now if you don't have something like this, you can make your own with tagboard and found shapes in your house, or you can just trace lids of different sizes. I'm using a Stabilo all pencil in white, and then with my angle brush I'm just covering each of the circles with gesso. And you can see the texture that still shows up from all the ripped pieces of gel prints. I'm not necessarily going for complete coverage, although you will see me add another coat here. I'm not sure if that was completely necessary with how this went. That's a personal choice. At this time I wasn't sure if I was going to leave it white or if I was going to go with a color. The page kind of took charge of itself. Some of these circles I put going off the page. I like how that makes it look like the page is going to continue on, and it adds some interest. I even doubled up one of the circles. So I'm using the wet baby wipe, and I'm just getting rid of the Stabilo all pencil. If you use a watercolor pencil, that will happen too. I used white because I didn't want it to tint the color of the circles, even though now I'm going to be painting them. So I'm adding another coat. Not sure that was necessary, but primarily I really wasn't sure where I wanted to go with this page. So that just kind of keeps me in the act of creating. until an idea takes hold. So once that is completely dry, I grab some of my Liquitex paints. Now I wanted to pull colors from the background. So I have a light blue permanent and a light purple here as well. And I think there's a couple purples. I used 2 shades of purple and this one blue. And I really like this light blue permanent. It really picks up some of the lighter blues that are interspersed in the collaged background, as does the purple. I also wanted to lighten this up a little bit when I chose these colors because the background is fairly dark. Now if you want, you can mix colors and blend colors and get all sorts of interesting patterns and designs on these circles. But because the background is so busy, I wanted to keep it rather plain. And I apologize for the lighting in this video. It's a very, very cloudy day and definitely impacts the video quality. So now I'm grabbing all my texture stamps and putting the template back on, masking off the rest of it, and I'm just applying a stamp onto these circles. Now I'm just dipping the stamp into black acrylic paint and stamping on each of the circles. And I'm trying not to overthink it about where I'm putting each design. And if you're quick, because it's acrylic on acrylic, you can use a baby wipe, clean it up, and try again. And so here I've switched to putting the paint onto the stamp with a makeup sponge. And I have a little bit more control, and I like the results better with that. But you try both ways and see which one works best for you. So here I'm using Tim Hortons cup liner. On the back side is this very corrugated pattern, and if I do it crisscross, you get this lovely textured stamp. So I put it one way, then I put it another way. I love that stamp. And so cost effective. And when you use acrylic paints on stamps, make sure you take the time to clean them out. Spray with Murphy's Oil soap and water and a scrub brush, and away you go. Here I'm using the float technique, and I'll put a link to the video where I actually teach how to do this. It's really hard to videotape, but you're using a little bit of paint and just highlighting or shading either the inside or the outside of a shape. And here I've chosen to use Prussian blue on all of them, the purple ones as well as the blue, just to coordinate it all together. And then in a few minutes you're going to see me use black and do the outside. Now if you don't want to try this technique, you can do this with a Stabilo oil pencil. You can get the Stabilo oil pencils in blue, and I have one of those, or in black. It would all work really well. But you can see here what a difference this shading on the inside and then the shading around the circles makes to the overall effect. It really makes these circles pop out, stand out, and give some depth to this page. Before this, it was very, very flat. This just built a whole lot of interest in there. You can use Stabilo oil pencil, you could use a watercolor pencil in here, you could use nail color 2s. And here I'm adding even a little bit more shading with a woodless charcoal pencil that I got from Artist Lock, which I love using for this technique. But because the paper, the background here is all the little torn bits of paper, it's fairly rough. So this wasn't working. When I was rubbing it, it tended to bring up some of the papers. So it wasn't my first choice. But you can see how these circles are now popping if you compare it back. If you go back in the video and look to this page before I did all the shading and highlighting detailing. Unsure what I want to do, I get out some gold, I cover up the circles, and I'm going to do some splattering. And yes, that's way too much gold. Add some water, and I'm using a fan brush, and I'm splattering with gold. Now the gold, because it's on the entire background, kind of makes it all work together, makes it cohesive. Any of the paint that I got on the circles, I'm just removing with a wet baby wipe. And again, that's the benefit of using acrylics on your first layers. So I get up my Tim Holtz stamping platform, and I am using this butterfly stamp. Now this is like 3 inches by 4 inches, give or take, and it's from Kaiser Craft, and it was one of my Christmas presents. And I love this big, bold butterfly, so I was quite anxious to use it. And I can see that it's going to become one of my favorites. And I'll put a link to that and any specialized products in the description box below. Thank you so much. If you go through my link to the Amazon store, I do get a small commission, but it doesn't cost you any more, and I highly appreciate it. Now I'm putting a coat of gel medium on here to seal this before I add any kind of color medium on that. Now I've chosen to use distress crayons, and they will go on much smoother and blend easier. Because I put the gel medium. If you just use raw paper, it just kind of soaks into the paper. But you could use Neocolor tubes, watercolor pencils, watercolor brushes, whatever you like. Now I chose to put the blue, light blue in the middle because I have the light blue in those circles. And I chose to put the purple color, pinky purple color, on the outside because most of my background is blue and I wanted the butterflies to stand out as much as possible, even though I am using an analogous color scheme. An analogous color scheme is a color scheme where all the colors are next to each other on the color wheel, and you're guaranteed that those are going to work well together, although you will have the challenge of making things pop and stand out from each other if everything is. So here I'm using Mermaid Lagoon, Chip Sapphire, and I believe the purpley one is Seedless Preserves. Now the problem with using the distress crayons is they are not permanent. They're more permanent than some things, but when you add any wet thing on there and move it around, put any pressure, it will reactivate. And you'll see that that causes me a little bit of problems later on. So after cutting these out, you have these white edges you can see. So I'm just using a makeup sponge and some black acrylic paint. Lots of people use ink. I prefer using the black acrylic paint because typically I have it sitting there from some other point. Now when I get to arranging and figuring out the composition of my page, as you can see, everything is very much all the same colors, and the butterflies aren't really standing out a lot. And in order to lighten the background, I decide I'm going to do some splattering in white. This time I don't even bother to cover up the circles. Instead, I'm just going to grab a wet baby wipe and clean the circles before it dries. Now, looking for more ways to lighten this page and make those butterflies stand out, I grab my brand new liner bottle, another Christmas present, and I put some Liquitex Basic in there and water and get it to a nice consistency, and that's just trial and error. And now I'm just adding these dots on the outside of the butterfly, and that's just giving some contrast and lightening the butterflies, and I really like how that looks. And I'm absolutely in love with these liner bottles. I kind of hemmed and hawed about getting them for a long time, which is why they ended up on my Christmas list, because I just couldn't rationalize spending the money. But I have 4 of them, and I put black paint, white paint, gold paint, and I think the last one may end up being either a dark blue or gold. So happy with the butterflies. I'm still finding that the background is a little too dark, so I decided to take the liner bottle and do some rough scribble-like circles around my circles. Now this is not my comfort zone. I always love the look, but I want it to be just kind of perfect. So I'm really fighting the urge to wipe it all off and go exactly right on it. But I fought the urge, let it sit and dry. And here you see me using gel medium to put on the butterflies. Now some of the Distress crayon does reactivate and does get color the white dots that I put on the butterfly. So in retrospect, I would have done the white dots after I glued them. So you can improve on that. So after drying, I do get out the Distress crayons and I add back some of the color that was removed. No problem. And off camera, I even get out the white liner bottle and try to whiten up some of those dots because I really want that contrast. So using the float technique, I'm shading around the outside of the butterflies to make them stand out from everything else that's now the background. And I do go over this a couple times. Doing the float technique in this way, you build up layers. You can always add another swipe of it, but it needs to dry in between. So patience does come in handy. I'm using the black in the liner bottle just to make the butterfly's body stand out a little bit more, and adding back those antennas that I never bothered to fussy cut around. So I cut out the phrase "Choose Joy" with my Silhouette Cameo, and this was in my stash. Now I wanted the white because I really liked it, but it just looked too plain, like I just took a piece of paper and cut it out. So I decided that I'm going to put a coat of this shimmery goodness from the Crafter's Workshop on it. And oh my God, love this. We'll totally be doing this again with anytime I want white letters. It makes them look finished without adding too much color. And you can just see the sheen and the shine that's there. It just adds just that little extra something. Didn't even know this product existed, but I am in total love with this shimmery goodness from the Crafter's Workshop. Really happy with how the page turns out. Apologize, the pictures are a little dark. They don't really show the vibrancy of this page. It's a very, very cloudy day here on Vancouver Island, but I wanted to get this video up and running. Here are some close-ups so you can see some of the details and the interest that I've built into this page. So if a page isn't going the way you see in your head, just go with it. Something better is bound to turn up. Go with where the page wants you to go. And enjoy. See you next time. Thanks for watching, everybody.